Winning is a choice and not just a stroke of luck, and that's what a series of studies into behavioral science has found out. Scientists believe a healthy baby's brain can be shaped into any desired way, and that the early years determine how patterns are created, and they in turn determine one's attitude towards everything, including work.
All of us are wired, and I think we should just clarify what's good about wiring and what still needs work on wiring. The term that behavioral science uses is conditioning, or being in patterns, right? It's a habituated way of being. Let me just do a simple example. You ask people to just clasp their hands, right? A simple act of just clasping their hands, and you'll find people will just do it in a manner that's comfortable to them,
Yeah.
right? So you'll have one of the two thumbs on top. Which one do you have on top?
I have my left thumb.
Left. I have my left too, right? And it's got nothing to do with whether we are left-handed or right-handed.
Huh.
Now, if I ask you to just unclasp
Huh.
and shift one finger,
Yeah, it's
Right?
uncomfortable.
the same 10 fingers feel uncomfortable. So they studied this and they found that kids were about 4 months old when they first did this, and they possibly did this, but one of the two started feeling more comfortable, and it became wired and conditioned. Similarly with behaviors. Behaviors in a given context become conditioned, they produce success, they give us result, and we embrace those behaviors and they get wired into us. Now, while wiring is good, it enables us to do a lot of things. If we didn't have wiring, they estimated that a simple act like crossing the road could take forever. So the brain is wired in a way to process information, but at times this wiring may not be relevant to the context. And that's where we work with leaders to really explore what bits of the wiring may need a bit of tweaking.
You know, because in the corporate ladder, as you go higher, you have far more responsibility than just an individual's performance.
True.
And so your wiring has to be not just about yourself, but how you deal with people, how you respond to crises, you know, all of that. So is that why it's important to understand your wiring to see where you need to work and where you shouldn't?
The root cause or the first step, let me say, in terms of making change is about self-awareness. And one of the elements of self-awareness is to know your wiring. Now, we usually know our, if I may use the word wiring, in terms of our logic, right? What, in a rational sense, we know what works for us, what doesn't. But somewhere in an organization, apart from just your logical and your what you know, is also the entire role of things like drives and motivation. Now that wiring happens in a different part of the brain, and it's important to understand that wiring too, because that's the wiring which says, do I win for myself or do I win for a larger audience? We all know about teamwork, but yet most training organizations get called to help with teamwork. The knowledge isn't the issue, it's the competence to practice that where some sharpening is required.
Interestingly, within behavioral science, there is a sharp divide over one question on whether where you are born and the patterns that you fall into determines the decisions you make, or can a person be molded as circumstances change? So what's the right answer?
Let's recognize a couple of things. We are designed in a deterministic way, right? And that determinism, there are three broadly held beliefs. We are determined by what happens early on in childhood, as Freud had said. It's determined by what influences we had in our current environment, and it's influenced by our genes. Determinism, very simply explained, is what happens to you in a given situation, right? The moment you see a given stimulus, you respond in certain predetermined manners. But what humans have is possibly one of the most potent tools. It's called the power of choice. We are predetermined, we are pre-coded to a degree, but we can also choose the response that we have. And there was very deep, insightful work done on this in a context which was very different to an organization, but very relevant, by a man called Dr. Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a Jew thrown into the concentration camp, and he narrated his experiences in the concentration camp and people who survived in a beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning. And what he said was beautiful. He said, you can take away all of human freedoms except that last freedom, which is the power to choose one's attitude irrespective of circumstance. And why his work is so powerful is because he spoke about it in possibly the worst or the most challenging human situations. Now if it can work there, it can certainly work in today's times and in challenging corporate environments.
You know, behavioral science also takes a lot from sports and sports training, Tarun, which is very interesting because over there you have the coach with the individual working very, very closely. So a lot of these things that you talk about, are they really practiced on the field where you have mentoring with players, etc.? Because a lot of that is about trying to look at what is good and encouraging that.
Right. So coaching and mentoring is a process where you actually work with the best to just make them even better. And it helps, it's one of the processes that organizations use to enable their best performers to move up to whatever is the next level that they want them to get ready for the next level of role, the next level of complexity. So those are a couple of processes. But they all stem from a base called, a starting point called self-awareness. So self-awareness gives me a good sense of where I am, where I am not. And if my destination is clear, the journey becomes easier to map. If the starting point isn't clear, we don't know where to begin. We don't know what to start working on.
So if you figured this out, can anyone be exceptional? Can I choose to win? And that's what we are calling this series. Can I choose to win?
What behavioral science, years of behavioral science tells us, the circumstances are the same. People can choose to be exceptional irrespective of circumstance. So we'd really like to explore the bit. There is something that is pre-coded, there is something that you're hardwired to, but you have this enormous power to choose. See, look at a lot of stuff that we don't choose. You and I didn't choose the color of our skin. You and I didn't choose where we were born. You and I didn't choose where we grew up. But we still choose how we respond to a situation. This, what Viktor Frankl said was very interesting. He said the stimulus is the same. The same stimulus, the same directive from an organization, the same mandate to perform will produce different results. And that's a consequence of what we can choose. So yes, we can choose to win.
But are self-awareness and motivation all that one needs to be successful? What happens if the world around you is in turmoil and pressures mount? Can you choose to succeed even when outside forces are determining your chances of success? More on all of that when we return.